Hello, this is Jennifer Joy, Master Fearless Living Coach and Life Purpose Palm Reader, and this is the second in my video series about scientific hand analysis. And if you joined me in the first one, we talked about how this series of videos actually comes from my program called Your Patterns Unlocked. So I'm just giving you a little taste. The program goes a lot deeper, so if you want to check that out, you can check out the link included in the copy for this. For right now, though, this video is going to be about identifying fingerprints. And remember, if you haven't watched that last video, I encourage you to go back and watch it. And if you have, remember that fingerprints really form in utero between the 14th and 16th week of pregnancy, and they never change. And your fingerprints are as unique as a snowflake. Nobody else has ever had your fingerprints. No one else will ever have your fingerprints. And they develop at the same time that those folds in your brain develop. So they really do link to certain mental patterns we have. And in the scientific hand analysis world, we call this whole correlation soul psychology. So again, check out that first video to find out exactly how soul psychology is really around your soul's sacred mission in life, what you came to do, what you came to learn, and the patterns that you came to have. So, like I said, there are 4 main types of fingerprints. And these fingerprints are called patterns minutiae. And there are infinite possibilities because those 4 fingerprints can come in an array of different forms. They can be mashed up together. They can be on different fingers. They can be in your palm. It's just infinite possibilities that make up the unique person that is you. So let's look at the first type of the main category of fingerprint, and that is the arch. The arch is considered the least complex of the fingerprints. So we think about it, a theory is that in utero, it takes the least amount of energy to create this type of fingerprint. And you can see that it looks a little bit like an anthill. It's just one arch. And if you go down near the middle and the bottom of that anthill, it's just another teeny tiny little hill. So that is an arch. It's just a hill on top of a hill on top of a hill on top of a hill. So the next type of fingerprint is the tented arch, which is a little more complex. You can see that it looks very much like an arch with hill upon hill upon hill. It's a little steeper hill usually, and if you go into the middle lower part of that arch, you can see there's actually sort of a straight line or a tent pole, or I like to think of it like a little Eiffel Tower there in the center. That is what makes it a tented arch. That little Eiffel Tower is holding up the arch. The third main type of fingerprint is called the loop. The loop is slightly more complex, and right now in history, it is the most common fingerprint. It is the one that is seen the most. And you can see that it looks like a little lasso or a rounded wave, and it comes in on the left in this particular one. Comes in on the left, it loops around, and it goes back out the left side again. So that loop comes in and goes out that same side. And some of you might be saying, wait a minute, I think I see a little Eiffel Tower in there. And yes, with a loop, there is a little Eiffel Tower, and in this particular example, it's showing up on the right side. There's a tiny little Eiffel Tower there propping up that loop. And in a loop fingerprint, that Eiffel Tower is found way on the side of the finger. So the predominant print, the predominant feature of that finger or that palm print would be this loop, this lasso. And then the final type of fingerprint of these main 4 types is called a whorl. Yes, that's whorl with an O, not an I. That's not a typo. And this is the most complex. And it is also fairly common. Not as common as the loop, but it's the second most common fingerprint. And you can see that it sort of circles around like a bullseye. And it can spiral in, or you can have perfect little circles that create that bullseye, and that is called a whorl. And for some of you who are very astute right now, you might be saying, oh, I think I see tent poles there too. And yes, if you look in the lower left and right hand corner, there is sort of that Eiffel Tower effect on each side that holds up that whorl. So So that is a whorl. Now, as I mentioned previously, those are the 4 main types, and there can be mashups. Those 4 types can come in an array of different forms and be sort of combined. And there's even a fingerprint we call the gamut because it runs the gamut. It contains a little bit of everything. But here are some very common mashups that we can see. There is the arch loop, and you can see we mostly have an arch in this first example, but inside there's this little tiny loop on the right side, a little tiny loop. There is the tented arch loop here in the middle, and that where with a loop we said that little Eiffel Tower was way off to the side of the finger. In this particular example, the loop and that little tented Eiffel Tower are sort of both taking center stage in the middle of the fingerprint, or roughly near the middle. And that is a tented arch loop. And then there is the peacock, which is actually like a combination of a whorl and a loop. And you can see that it loops in around the little tiny whorl in the middle, and the loop comes around, and on this case it's on the right side that it loops in and it loops out. And this again is a mashup that we see. Now what's interesting is you can have all these different mashups. Some people have the same type of pattern on all of their fingers and don't really have any patterns in the palm. Or maybe they have it all, they have the same patterns on their fingers and different patterns in their palms. Or you might have completely different patterns everywhere. It is completely, everything is possible. Everything is possible. So that's where it's great that if you don't immediately recognize your fingerprint, it's great to talk to a scientific hand analyst who has really studied and determined how to categorize these. Because depending on which of your fingerprints is most complex and least complex is how we determine that soul psychology. And also counting how many of each type you have is how we would determine that soul psychology. So we're going to go ahead and put that together a little bit, talking about the element of life schools in your soul psychology in the next video, and how fingerprints correspond to your life schools. And your life school is really the overriding theme in your life. It's all those patterns that show up for you again and again, the good patterns and the ones that maybe aren't so comfortable. We're going to find out all about that in the next video, so I can't wait to see you there.